I'm Caleb Giddings from Gun Nuts Media, and I've been very fortunate in my career in the firearms industry. I've had the opportunity to train with some of the best trainers at some of the best schools on the planet for teaching people how to shoot, for teaching people how to be better at self-defense. I've trained with Craig Douglas, I've trained with Todd Green, I've trained at Blackwater and Gunsight, at Insights Training Center. The list of impressive trainers and the list of extremely talented people that I have been fortunate enough to learn from is quite extensive, and I count myself as a very lucky individual for having had that training experience. That's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about 5 firearms trainers that you should absolutely avoid. Number 5, Front Sight Firearms Academy. Front Sight's located in Nevada outside of Las Vegas, and it would be a great place to go train if you wanted to go learn the best tactics and techniques that were taught 30 years ago. They still teach a very doctrinal weaver stance with isometric push-pull and locked elbow, or not locked elbows, but pushing forward with this hand and pulling back with this hand. And it's not an optimal way to shoot. No major law enforcement agency is still really teaching that. Obviously, it's not used by competitive shooters. No tier 1 special operation units are still using a push-pull weaver stance anymore. There's really nothing that's bad about Front Sight from a safety perspective. Their gun safety and gun handling is probably all fine, although they have had more than a few students shoot themselves. But if you're going to go somewhere and you're going to want to learn weaver stance or something like that, go to Gunsight. Go to where it was created, the fountain, as it were. Front Sight is just a waste of money. And I'm not even going to get into how weird and culty it is because of Dr. Ignatius or Schnaziash, Dr. Piazza, the Scientologist who has been sued by all kinds of people for the fraudulent land deals that went on around Front Sight. We're just going to leave that out. Number 4 is T-Rex Arms, a.k.a. Lucas Botkin. Now, some of you guys may not be familiar with Lucas Botkin or T-Rex Arms, and if you aren't, count yourself among the lucky. If you are, well, I'm sorry that you are. He's a Instagram famous shooter. He has no military background, no law enforcement background, and no competition background. And if you're going to teach people how to shoot, you should have at least one of those things. You should be a reasonably accomplished competition shooter, or a reasonably, accomplished and well-trained military professional, or a reasonably accomplished and well-trained law enforcement person. You just should. That's my opinion. Fight me. He's got none of those things. And then if you add in his unique character flaws, there's really no reason to go give him money. Let's talk about some of those character flaws. He's been caught repeatedly speeding up his videos on Instagram to make himself look like a better shooter than he is. He has gone to 3-gun matches and pussed out when there was any sort of physical activity that was involved in the match, like carrying a dummy or something like that. He's made negative and derogatory comments about people who actively serve in the military, implying that we're dumb or that we weren't able to do something else with our lives. And last but not least, he's a homophobe. There was a recent thing that he put on his Instagram where he said some very homophobic and hateful statements, and I don't really care how you feel about gay people one way or the other, but don't put it out there if you're a public figure, all right? My personal stance is I don't care what people do in the bedroom. Whatever makes you happy, man, that's not on me. I just want to shoot guns and get old with as minimal government interference in my life as possible. So, that's our number 4. Number 3, Rob Pincus. Rob is the best businessman in the firearms industry. He is, absolutely. At least in the training side of the industry. He's phenomenal at the business of training people. Unfortunately, that doesn't make you a very good trainer. Again, Rob's one of those guys with a questionable qualification background, but the reason why we recommend strongly against training with him in his combat-focused shooting school is because Rob doesn't do two very important things. He doesn't believe in objective standards. That's why you'll never see a shot timer in his class. Shot timers are extremely important. They give us a way to measure our skills with an objective standard. So unless you're editing your videos and speeding them up like Lucas Botkin, shot timers don't lie. Shot timers don't lie when you're on the line with a bunch of other people that you know. And that's very, very important. You can't hide from performance when you shoot a drill on the timer and all of your friends are standing there watching you shoot it, and then they see the timer when you're done. Rob doesn't believe in timers. It's terrible. Doesn't really use a lot of difficult to shoot targets either. But the other thing that he doesn't do is he doesn't demo in front of his students. And I am a firm believer that you must be able to perform the skills that you are trying to teach in order to teach them well. That doesn't mean you have to be a USPSA Grand Master, but if you are going to teach people marksmanship, you should be able to shoot, and you should be able to demonstrate to your students that you can shoot. Number 2, Sonny Puzikas, or however you say his last name. Again, this might not be somebody you're familiar with, but if you are familiar with Sonny Puzikas, I'll sum up why you should never take a class from Sonny Puzikas. He shot one of his assistant instructors. It's a big deal because it shows a failure to properly put safety protocols in place that are designed to protect the students and the AIs. He was doing a shoot house run, didn't properly clear the shoot house before actually doing the live ammo shoot house run, shot one of his assistant instructors. And then after he shot the assistant instructor, there was never any moment of, oh my God, I've made a huge mistake. There was no public explanation or apology or anything like that. He really just tried to sweep it under the rug like it had never happened. So if you're going to take your hard-earned money and spend it on somebody to get training from, maybe don't spend it on a guy who shoots people and then makes excuses about it. Which brings us to number 1, the trainer that I would avoid at all costs. I would go to Sonny or Rob or any of these other people that I've mentioned before. I would go to our number 1 culprit, Gabe Suarez. Now, why wouldn't I go to Gabe Suarez? Aside from the fact, well, let's put it this way. Gabe isn't teaching anything that you can't get elsewhere from other instructors. He just isn't. All of his marketing hype about the gentleman killer and blah-de-de-blah and this and that is just that, marketing hype. He's not teaching any fundamental marksmanship skills that you can't get from other trainers. And it's important to remember that because then let's look at Gabe Suarez's background. Gabe Suarez was convicted of crimes. He was convicted of defrauding his police department's retirement fund. So he's stealing money from the retirement fund for other cops. And he was sentenced to just under a year in prison and a misdemeanor so that he can still own firearms. That's strike 1. Strike 2, Gabe Suarez has publicly admitted that he had planned to kill his fellow officers, that he planned to murder a bunch of cops, and then claims that Jesus, like the Lord God Almighty, came to him in a vision while he was outside his former police station ready to murder cops and told him not to do it. Strike 2. Strike 3, he's a douchebag. I mean, if you look into his online persona, he's very douchey to people who disagree with him. And with those strikes against him, with his his documented criminal history, his desire to murder law enforcement officers, and the way he conducts himself as a person, if he's not teaching anything that you can't get from someone else, why waste your money? Why spend $400 on someone that is, why? It doesn't make any sense. And there's another aspect to this too. Let's say, God forbid, you have to use your firearm in self-defense, and the prosecution decides that they're going to subpoena your former trainers. they see that you've trained with Gabe Suarez. So they get Gabe Suarez up on the stand, and now they're able to bring up his articles about running people over with cars, his past criminal history. All of the negative aspects of training with him are going to come to light and be used against you at this trial. It's just too much of a risk. Now that we've gone over this and we've talked about these 5 trainers that I would avoid, I do want to end on a positive note. There are a ton of great defensive firearms instructors out there who are teaching good material, who are reputable people, and who I would be happy to have on the witness stand defending me, explaining what they trained me to do. Craig Douglas, obviously Craig's one of the best. Ernest Langdon, Masad Ayub, Insights Training Center, again, Gunsight. In fact, if somebody bought a gun and they said, Caleb, I want to go take one handgun class, and I'm only ever going to take one handgun class my entire life, I would say, all right, cool, go take the 250 course at Gunsight. Even though their techniques are a little bit dated for shooting, the 250 course at Gunsight is probably the best overall encapsulation of what it means to use a handgun in self-defense, and I strongly recommend it. That's it for today's video. Thank you guys for watching, and remember, until next time, run your gun, not your mouth.